Today, fell off a cliff. Here are some other guys.
Hey, Phil.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio with Bruce, Neil, and Phil. This is our special 5th anniversary edition. Woo! Everybody very excited here. Yay! This, of course, is the 5th year that we've been spending all our money on noisemakers at Dollarama. And, of course, our show is meticulously planned out and rehearsed. This is, of course, the show with songwriters talking. Now, the songwriter is all about the craft of songwriting. And we have quite a group of people here. The usual motley assortment of people. Mr. Neil, how you doing, Neil?
I'm doing great. So happy it's our 5th anniversary, 5 years. Can't believe it.
That's true.
It's true.
That's very exciting.
I checked the calendar. It's actually true.
It is, actually.
Yeah, it was November something 2013. Yeah.
And Mr. Bruce Herod, how you doing, Bruce?
Well, good. I was on a search for a gluten-free dessert tonight because one of our, we're going to have a little bit of dessert. Mm-hmm. So I ended up with a pumpkin pie. So I hope everyone likes pumpkin pie out there, the listeners. And it's seasonal, right?
It's very seasonal.
It is. Pumpkin spice is a big thing.
Yeah.
You know? And of course, joining us is Mr. Mike McInnes.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Mike.
Thanks for having me back. And on the way here, I noticed that not only is it the 5th anniversary program, this is the 5th time you guys have had me as a guest host on the show.
Oh,
Coincidence?
I think not.
I know.
No, we planned the whole thing.
Yeah.
We got the whole 10 years planned out.
Wheels within wheels.
And of course, helping us along, Linda Lavender is joining us. Hi, Linda.
Hi there.
Howdy doody.
Well, I just think it's special because I joined you in 2018.
That's right.
Actually, I looked up the date today because Neil wasn't sure if this was how long I've been here, and it's been since January 16th. So,
Wow.
you're here today.
Very exciting. And of course, doing the social media, Vanessa Vreeland. Hello, Vanessa.
Hey.
How long have you been here, Vanessa?
2 years now.
2
Been here
years.
for 2 years.
Wow. And of course, the man on the board, Mr. Michael Broadfoot.
Michael.
Yes.
He's our newest
Very
member.
exciting. Right. So this is, I guess this will probably be the last time we do an anniversary show for a little while, because doing like a 6th anniversary or 7th anniversary doesn't have the same kind of gravitas as
the 5 years is wood.
Well, sure.
It's the wood
That's
is
true.
the symbol, and we think we can't really go much better than
So
that.
the next one's going to be 10 or?
10, yeah.
We should do
I
11.
think 10. Or
Do
maybe
11th year.
Skip 10.
But it is, 5th anniversary is wood. So,
Yeah.
when, people think of the Song Talk Radio, I want people to think of wood.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good
Norwegian
thing.
wood,
Knock on wood.
Yes. Right. So
for example.
let's go around and talk about the impressions that we've had just for the last year. How things have been going. Let's start off with Bruce.
Well, 2018 was a year in which we started to do more theme shows. So for the first 4 years, we pretty much had a lot of performers come in here and play music live and or recordings. And we started to realize that there were some topics that required a deeper dive. And so we all came up with different ideas for that. And I really enjoyed that. My favorite was the Mental Health Awareness Week, where we decided that it was time for people to be aware that people needed help in that area and some, getting rid of the stigma. And actually, Neil, the band that Neil is in, was very behind that as well. They've been very proponents of mental health awareness. So I really liked that show, and choosing songs that would talk about was a pretty heavy show. I mean, a couple of the songs were about suicide, but I was on the subway today, and there was injury at track level, which usually means a suicide, and shuttle buses and all that sort of thing. And it got me thinking about how we need to look after people before they get to that point. I need to look after people better. So that was the highlight for me on the theme shows.
How about you, Neil? What do you?
Yeah, the last year certainly more theme shows. Certainly a lot of really impressive guests that we've had this year. We had Angela Saini come back. We had Sean Bertram I don't know if he came.
Yeah.
He came to us in 2017 originally, but he came
think
back
so.
with another.
Brought his dad
another-
back.
and brought his dad back. And we had that.
Yeah.
We had that father-son special because his dad,
That's right.
Alistair Bradley, a very accomplished singer-songwriter in his own right. So that was pretty
Nice
cool.
Father's Day show.
Yeah, and certainly with the theme shows, I mean, there's no shortage of topics to cover, right? And certainly those are interesting, especially the ones that get into a little bit deeper into the music theory sorts of things, like the key modulation show that we did with Frank Horvat
Yeah,
a
that
couple
was
months ago.
Modes.
We covered a lot of stuff. That one's like good for repeat listenings.
Yeah, I think in general most of the theme shows can bear repeat listening because
Yeah.
we move pretty fast.
We moved pretty fast, and it's always amazing having a really educated guest on those shows as well because they teach us stuff.
Oh God, yeah,
right? Because I learned so much from Frank
more.
that night.
And of course, Michael, our super fan.
Who's listened to every single episode.
Well, I'm sure several people throughout the internet community have. It's just that I'm the one you happen to know has.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me.
Fair enough.
So Michael, what is your impression of our last year here?
Well, I just to iterate what Neil and Bruce have said. It definitely was a big year for specialty shows. In fact, I think my highlight this year might have been your "How to Begin a Song."
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And partly, I think, because it harkens back to one of my, if not my favorite Song Talk episode ever, which was, I think, your the very first ever specialty show was where the three of you wrote a song altogether. Which I think. I mean, you started it. Neil eventually finished it for himself. It became
Yes.
like the break pad song, or the break pad song. or
That's
break
right.
up
It's a
song?
breakup song, BRAKE breakup song.
Right. We chose a challenging subject, and then we actually started writing a song.
Yeah.
Well,
And
thank you. I'm glad you like that.
And I think that was your 20th episode, if I'm counting right. And what are you up to
Perhaps.
now? What?
250.
246.
246. Amazing.
And also on the complete opposite end from the very somber mental health episode, I really enjoyed, I guess, hosting on the comedy episode.
Yeah,
That's right. That was a fun one.
And we heard music from Linda Lavender herself.
Yes.
That's right. Speaking of Linda, so you've been here with almost a year.
Yes, I have.
So, what are you thinking of the show now that you've been here for a whole year and putting up with us?
I've
She
been,
hasn't left yet.
I haven't left yet. Here tonight, I've been focused on, like Michael is tonight at the soundboard. I'm a little more focused on the quality of the sound when I'm doing that job.
Yeah.
And a couple of times now I've been away from that job and able to, be part of the show. So that's pretty exciting. And the shows that stand out for me, again, you've mentioned them already. The mental health show was really outstanding. It's so important, and it's close to my heart because I'm an art therapist and a music therapist, interdisciplinary arts therapist. So that show was really interesting for me to be part of and listen to. The comedy show. Some of the guests too. Like, it's been really wonderful to be here and hear the personal take on songwriting and really get to ask the questions and hear the answers to questions about songwriting from all those unique points of view. Paul Novotny,
yeah.
Julian
He was
Taylor,
brilliant.
Yeah.
of course,
Julian Taylor's
Frank Horvath is always amazing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
may not know that you're a singer-songwriter yourself. We don't always mention that. So you're actually, I guess, you've picked up some tips on things to do.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot all the time. Yeah.
That's great. And of course, Vanessa Vreeland, she's just always working too hard to do anything.
She's focused on
She's
her cell
focused
phone.
on-
I don't know
that's right.
why. It's kind of rude.
Anti-social.
Oh, are you doing social
It's
media?
it's anti-social, but it's pro-social
I
media.
thought she was just texting her friends.
probably.
Trying to ignore you.
Okay.
Now, Michael, why don't we actually even ask you? I'm going to turn this mic around and have you tell us what you thought of last year.
I liked the theme songs. I thought that was a good idea. I always like hearing probably the mix between having artists come in, because even just the last couple of months, there's been some great artists, and just sitting here at the board, I've learned a lot. It's been great. But I like the idea of the theme songs. They've been a lot of theme shows.
theme shows.
That's been a lot of fun.
Let's do a theme song show.
That's true. Actually, I'd love to do that. We do a theme song draft show, which
Yeah.
is fun.
Well, I'm curious, actually, the ones you mentioned, Michael, you thought that the ones where we sort of do something spontaneous, not spontaneous, but like create something on
Live.
the fly, you found those particularly
Yeah, well, especially
Were they more useful to you as a songwriter?
Yeah, well, I mean, they've certainly been interesting, and I especially even remember going back to number 20 when you were writing a song yourself. I remember very specifically thinking, ooh, that is an interesting idea. I would go something different, and by the end of that hour, I was definitely, I was in a completely different place because I was thinking, ooh, I was still listening, but I was like, ooh,
Right.
and my song but I would have done it slightly different, and now I'm writing this kind of song.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, especially, and of course, it's especially interesting because I think usually the first question that gets asked when you have a musical guest is some sort of version of what is your songwriting process kind of thing.
Yes.
And here we saw, and in those shows we saw it come out as it happened in real
there's a
time.
difference seeing it actually in action.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
real time, yeah, as opposed to just talking about it.
Do you remember
yeah.
there was that woman who came in? I forget her name, and she did the stuff with the looping pedal.
Rachel
yeah,
Raddatz.
Raymond.
Yes.
Yeah, and she was just amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she just basically improv something live on the air.
Yeah, which is
And it
pretty
was
cool.
just an amazing piece of work, and it was just improv,
Yeah,
pure improv,
Yep.
and it was
yeah,
it was-
yeah. That was pretty spectacular to see.
In fact, we should do a theme show with looper pedals,
We could.
because that would be good. So let's talk about our favorite shows over the last 5 years, which is a long time, because the show certainly changed from the very beginning when we started off as a half-hour show.
And remember, it was 2 guests over the course of
Yeah,
half
we
an
should
hour. It
explain-
was 2
Yeah.
Maybe I could
15-minute segments.
I could explain that, Phil. When we started out, we pitched a half-hour show to the radio station, and we thought we don't want it to be boring, to lag.
Yeah.
So we actually had 2 artists, each with a song. The idea that each of the artists could critique each other's songs as well as the 3 of us, so there were 4 people critiquing it. And then we realized that we were having to move so fast. Oh, the happy birthday sign just fell down off the wall. Gee,
You can't
you'd
see
think
that on
you'd
the
get
radio.
better tape at Dollarama. But anyway, so then we said, okay, let's have one guest for half an hour. And then we realized we really needed an hour with one artist. And what was fair is the artist is going to schlep down here, spend some time with us. We figured,
Yes.
give them the hour. And the station was happy to give it to us. So now it's 1 hour, 2 songs, one song
guest.
per half hour
Yeah.
of that artist. So we can go in more depth.
Yeah, we tried three songs, and the one song always got sort of shortchanged.
Yeah.
The really astounding thing about that is that at the beginning we thought that we wouldn't have enough to talk about.
Yes.
And now, even as the hour gets done, we're
Yeah.
still left with things that we could have kept on going.
I often find at about the point like 45, I feel like things are really going and you're really getting into some deep stuff.
Right.
And then you've got like another like 10 minutes and you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
And that can be quite frustrating,
Yeah.
But let's talk about our favorite shows from the last while.
So I have one from January 26, 2015, and I think Michael has a clip on this, Lauren Taggart's performance.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not
she's
sure
amazing.
which song you chose from that.
It was a reunion, I think.
Reunion? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lauren Taggart was I think she's from Calgary or out west anyway. She came to Toronto. She was about 20 at the time and kind of unassuming. And she sat down. I don't think we had really heard much. She gave us one song recorded, I guess, but
Perhaps,
she
yeah.
hasn't really.
That's enough
hadn't
to tell, though.
Hadn't recorded much, and she sat down, and well, I'll let you listen for yourself, and then we can talk about it. But here's Lauren Taggart singing Reunion.
Okay.
I turned my bleeding heart to the disco. My 2 left feet started a tango. The red suit and tie that took me here is pushing me to the brink. Is it too late to get up and leave? What would they think of me now? I'm the happiest I've been in years, but man, I could use a drink. Queen bee's now a bloated monster. Class clowns now wearing a frown. And I had to change my number, cause you won't be seeing me around. Cause this reunion, it was based off a battle of oohs. And I know that you're not happy. Someone out there's a better dancer than you.
Yeah, that's Lauren
Taggart.
Taggart.
Yeah, she's great.
I remember when we did, with the woo woo woos. I think
Yeah.
that may have been the first guest we had that actually did like the official millennial whoop thing.
Yeah,
And what was
she spent like
great-
half the show talking about the millennial whoop.
And actually, and it was a very deliberate,
Oh,
conscious.
absolutely.
You know, she sort of said that it didn't have that, and then she realized a lot of songs had that ooh stuff, and she
Yeah.
added it in. She was very, for someone who was quite young, she was a very accomplished songwriter.
Absolutely.
So, Neil, what is one of your favorites?
One of my favorites, one of our usual favorite guests, Blair Packham. And he came on the show, like the last couple times Blair's been with us, he's been guest hosting with one of our theme shows. And he's brought on like some Beatles songs that he liked and dissected them, and I've learned a lot from him on those ones. But one of the very first times he came on, he played a song that ended up on his latest album, Unpopular Pop. And the song was called Loved by You. And he explained how he wrote this song at the time his mother had recently passed away. And he wrote this song after that event. And I remember listening to him perform it on the guitar. Beautiful, heartfelt performance, beautiful, heartfelt song. And you know, you're always told, and even Blair preaches this when he talks about song critiques and songwriter circles and things like that. Like, don't tell me what the song is about.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what the song is about. The song should speak for itself. And the lyrics that he had were not as direct as, you know, my mom passed away, all
Right.
that sort of stuff. But having known the backstory to the song, it just hit me with so much more emotion and so much more impact, right? And for his history, not really listening to lyrics that closely in the past, you know, I think that song that he did sort of inspired me to start really taking a closer listen to lyrics as I listened to the songs, because I couldn't even comment on his lyrics. I'm like, that's beautiful. I'm not
Yeah.
going to touch that.
Yeah.
And,
Did you bring it
we'll go
in?
Yeah, I have his album recording of it queued up there.
So give it a go.
Yeah, let's have a
give it a
listen.
I don't know what I've been doing. I don't know where I went wrong. I don't know that I will ever know. Just when it seems that the answer must be out on the horizon, it disappears every time that I get close. And that mirage is my torment as I wonder what it all meant. From the words I said to ones I never spoke. Every nighttime turns to dawn. Every day will turn to dust. I can't seem to move on, even though they say I must. Every sinner has a future. Every saint has a past. People change, many people do, but they weren't loved by you.
Wow, what a great song by Blair Packham.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And that was really an example of how, you know, he felt a certain sadness and grief, and that came through in the song, but it wasn't super specific. We talk about this a lot on the show about writing lyrics that can be specific to your experience, but that can actually reach other people and enter their experience, and they can enter the song from a different avenue. But it's, you know, it's kind of universal and
I think there's a difference between specificity and personal. So,
Yes.
you know, good writing is specific, like it's a brown carpet and an amber light on falling on in the rain falling through the, you know, very specific color, texture, sound, etc. And that's very different from a very personal story that, you know, is yours, right? Like, and I think that's the thing, is to create. What am I trying to say? That when you are clear and you are very specific about a situation or a feeling or a look, it becomes universal because
Yes.
it's human, right? It's a
It can.
human thing.
I mean, it can. I mean,
It
that's,
It can.
I mean, I think,
especially the music part.
yeah, I mean, sometimes I've noticed young songwriters, they get so specific that, you know, it's very true to their own emotion, but it's
It's kind of self-indulgent.
It's
is
a
it?
bit self-indulgent, sometimes a bit almost embarrassing,
Yeah.
where you need a bit of distance so that other people can read themselves into the song.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You know,
that's what I
and
mean.
that's a tough thing.
Yeah,
you know,
and
to
even
do.
with that song, I mean, he carries such a gorgeous melody too. So
Oh, yeah.
just like, yeah.
Well, always
Solid
top-notch writing, which is why Blair's always a great guest.
That's why Blair is Blair.
How about you, Linda? What do you think of one of your favorite
Well,
shows?
I was just thinking about Blair and how much of a wealth of information he is about songwriting. He's a songwriter, musician, and he teaches it at college. So he's had a lot of experience with looking at people's songs and giving them feedback. And one of the best tips I got is from Blair, and what it was is. It's not really magical. Writing a song is not a magical thing. It's about taking it and working on it. Like you really actually do work. It requires work. So you sit down and then the craft of writing the song. The moment of the idea, the inspiration might be a magical moment, but it really comes down to a lot of work once you've got the song written. It doesn't usually just happen. Sometimes it comes out, you're lucky, but usually it requires writing and editing and molding.
I think that's one of the things that I've always wanted our show to talk about, is to not talk about the inspiration, which often the inspiration is what a lot of shows talk about, like just even general musical interview shows when they're talking to the sort of great unwashed. They want people to think about the inspiration. That's the, well, what is your inspiration? How do you get these ideas? Well, getting ideas isn't hard. Ideas are cheap. They just fall out of the sky. Being able to take your ideas and making them into something takes craft. And a craft is a technical, specific, mechanical thing to do. And it takes knowledge and experience. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. Just like you'll get inspired if you're a sculptor, inspired. But the thing that helps you make an effective sculpture is the craft of the mastery of the technique, and that's what we talk about.
When you talk about this, I always remember a famous quote by Neil Simon. He was a great Broadway playwright. Many of his plays went into film same time next year, et cetera, et cetera. A great comedy playwright. And he said, a play is not written, it's rewritten. And I thought that was really important to hear, that there's a lot of sweat goes into a good song. And I'm reading a lot about these groups of people that write songs now. Like, people are cynical and say, well, it's songwriting by committee. But actually, it could be a group of, the original artist and a couple co-writes. And they are crafting things together. I was listening to a young artist, and he was talking about what the co-write brought to it. It was just a little piece of how he pronounced a particular word.
That could be
and it's like, he said, damn, that's hookier than what I was doing, right?
90% of the royalties right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about so-called inspiration to me is about finding the moments in day-to-day life, or even in big events or whatever, and saying to yourself, hey, that would make a good song, right? And actually pursuing that and paying attention to that and working with it, like you say, like it's the idea. But if you're not sort of paying attention to what's going on in your life and being mindful of it, then you probably will be bereft of ideas. So it's not really inspiration, like it comes to you. You're actually sort of constantly seeking it out, and making a note for yourself. Hey, that could be a cool song.
Yeah,
I'm seeing a nice hat over on the pinup thing behind Bruce, and I'm like, okay, nice hat. What can I do with that? Maybe there's a song.
Rhymes.
What's that?
Nice hat. What can I do with that?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe you should get a cat.
Maybe you should get a cat. Okay,
That's a wrap.
Like I could even think about.
Yes,
This is first
rewriting.
draft.
There's no bad ideas, but sometimes
bad
there is.
execution, but hold on a second. Like, I mean, what I was getting at is, if I can see that, then I can maybe start developing a song about some guy. Maybe it's me that's a little bit jealous of how better dressed other men are, or whatever, right? And so, okay, maybe that's an idea.
Men
and I
with
can
hats.
pursue that. Men with hats.
As opposed to the men without
Without
hats.
hats,
Men
that's
without
true.
hats, yes.
Well, things were tough back then.
Which is another band
we had,
entirely.
when we had Il Vibe on, he talked about the aha moment.
Right.
and recognizing the aha moments in order to make those, like, use those into, like, for your inspiration for songwriting.
Right.
That
Yeah.
things people
Being
can relate.
I think it's mindful and aware, and having a creative artist's mind where everything is fodder, everything, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the ugly stuff, the beautiful stuff, and I think if you're a working artist, whether you're a sculptor, whether you're a music therapist or whatever, that stuff is just awake and alive in you, and it's an attitude, right?
Yeah, and the more you do it, the more you get better at it.
That's
Yeah.
true. So, and Mike, can you think of a favorite song from the last 5 years?
Well, I think that if you had to go with favorite songs, I really liked the first one by Brigid Fry, who was a very young artist.
yeah.
Oh,
and
right.
possibly that was just, I mean, the stuff here tends to be often very singer-songwritery, and hers was still in a rock and roll style, but more up-tempo than I find usually shows up on the show.
right.
And that's often because people are usually there with their single
Acoustic guitar and a voice, yeah.
But I was a big fan of that. All time, I still think probably body of work, Alicia Baker, I think, would buy. And she must have been from the third year, because I remember talking about her when I was a guest on your third year anniversary
Right,
show.
right. Amazing.
So some things kind of last
she's
forever.
brilliant. She's going places.
I think one of my favorite shows, like I'm a big fan of the theme shows.
Yes.
I've always been a big proponent of those because I think they have a lot of long-term value. I think, people are always looking for stuff. One of the favorite ones, which turned out to be a lot of fun, was the Rhymes-O-Rama
Yeah.
episode 218 from April of 2017, I believe, or was it 2018?
2018.
That was this
18?
year. Yeah.
Rhymes-O-Rama, which is great because rhymes are a really huge part of songwriting, and I think we really take them for granted. And people tend to just do, the really close rhymes, like every breath you take, every leaf you rake, every cake you bake, those kinds of. And there's lots of more interesting and
subtle ways of
doing it, and I think that's part of the craft that we talk about.
Yeah, because a lot of people always say it rhymes or doesn't rhyme, but there's a lot of
Different kinds of
nuance
rhyme.
in there, and there's a lot of gray area in between.
Yeah, and the using the rhyming or non-rhyming as a choice for the subject matter.
Yes.
And how when you rhyme, it can sometimes detract from the emotion. And when so you maybe move away from the direct rhymes, which may be more a simple sort of fun song to dance to. But I found that really interesting, the effect that near rhymes versus no rhymes because I wrote poetry back in the day, and that was always fun to say, it doesn't have to rhyme.
Well, if it doesn't rhyme, does that mean it's prose?
In a song, you mean? No, it means it's free verse.
It's free verse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of people don't like free verse poetry, but you know what? I think people are going to like what's coming up after these messages.
For those just joining us, you're listening to Song Talk Radio with Bruce, Neil, and Phil, streaming on songtalk.ca, and tonight it's our 5th anniversary show.
Yay!
Woo. Don't forget, applause. Noisemakers, please. Thank you.
Yep.
Don't forget, we love to hear from you. So tweet in your thoughts, your congratulations to us at Songtalk Radio on Twitter, via email feedback@songtalk.ca, and we'll share your thoughts here on the show. And you can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page at songtalk.ca. And coming up in the next few weeks, November 13th is going to be our first annual holiday gift guide.
Yes.
Phil, do you want to explain what that means?
Right. So what we want our listeners to do is to write in with suggestions for great presents for the songwriter or the musician in your life. So that could be something like a music stand or a piece of software, a web service, something that you have. It could be of any amount, something you wish people would buy you. So, if you think, gee, I wish someone would buy me a Les Paul guitar, that could be it. But, what you would like to give someone or what you wish someone would give to you.
I'll buy you a Les Paul guitar, Phil.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
That's a toy one.
Yeah, 21. Give me about 20 years.
You didn't say that, and actually this is legally binding.
Oh.
It's a
Is it
CRTC
legally
thing.
binding?
It's recorded,
It is. You
yeah.
didn't realize that. So
Doesn't Mike work in the legal world? Is that legally binding, Mike?
Yes.
Yes. You're not a lawyer. Okay, and on November 20th, the return of jazz bass singer-songwriter Cynthia Baba.
yeah, she just has a new single.
She's got a new single or an album. She's a collaborator of, what's his name?
Oh, him.
Marlon.
Yeah, Marlon Chaplin.
Marlon
Thank you very much. And if you're in the Toronto area, please join us at our next Songwriters Meetup on Sunday, November 18th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Transat Club. Free to join and free to attend. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link over to the Songwriters Meetup.
All right. And Mr. Brucey, what you...
Well, this is an interesting. We've got this book called A Musician's Dictionary by David Barber and Dave Donald. And this is called, this is a definition of polytonality.
Oh.
It's not a woman.
That's a lot of syllables.
Yeah. Well, it's polysyllabic.
Yes.
A pathological disease most likely to affect composers of modern music. A mild form of atonality. Since one of its characteristics is the evidence of a sense of confusion, it is often hard to detect, that being the usual state of most musicians and composers. Nevertheless, this particular confusion tends to manifest itself in a desire to be, quote, all things to all men, at least as regards key and key signature. It's polytonality.
So wait, is the actual definition like multiple key signatures going on at the same time? Is that what the real definition is for polytonality?
Yes, I think it shifting of keys. Polytonality would be tone, would be key, probably.
Yeah, lots of. As opposed to atonality, which is not necessarily a...
Which is just a lot of dissonance and stuff.
Yeah.
But you're actually talking about multiple key signatures working at the same time.
It's just supposed to be funny.
Isn't that just called jazz?
You're just totally ruining the joke, Neil.
Yeah, sometimes they're not that funny, but they're pointed. Right?
That's true.
A bit of a sharp.
No, I was just wondering what the actual definition was. That's all.
Well, why don't you
Vanessa
look it up
will
on your
look that
phone?
up.
We only,
Yeah.
you have it right
that's
there.
true.
Ask Mr. Google.
So Michael had some interesting thoughts.
Oh, you're just talking about collaboration and, having a whole bunch of people involved in it, and you don't know, someone could just add one little bit, like the hook or something that makes it. It's not a song anecdote, but the Monty Python writers, John Cleese and Graham Chapman, used to work together a lot. And Graham Chapman didn't do a lot, but he was crucial. And one particular example was Cleese came in with this sketch about someone returning a defective toaster, and Graham Chapman listened to the whole thing, smoked his pipe, and said, "Be funnier if it was a parrot." That was his contribution.
What a contribution.
Oh, and he returns the parrot. Tries
That's
to
right.
return the parrot.
It's
not
the
working properly.
Famous dead parrot. So, there's been a lot of changes. Like their very first theme song, which is was pretty rough. It was actually just an acoustic guitar thing that we sort of came up that we basically did for the demo for the show.
Yeah, we improvised it. Yeah,
and again, because we didn't know if we were going to be doing this show, so we didn't put much time, and then we kept that on for probably far longer than we should have.
About a couple of years.
A couple of years before we actually did our new one, which is lots of fun and has lots of expansion possibilities built in. But one thing that I'm really happy with over the last couple of years is the expansion of our crew. I think we have an amazing crew that comes out every Tuesday and basically gets none of the glory. Like Vanessa, who just does so much you wouldn't believe. She contacts our guests to make sure they're showing up on time, and she does all the social media.
And she runs our weekly meeting.
Runs a weekly meeting.
Production meeting.
Yeah, she's
she
just incredible.
shops for happy birthday signs at Dollarama.
She's a great decorator.
And then they fall.
She
Holiday decor. She does that very well.
Sort of our producer extraordinaire. She does an amazing
and
job.
And our technical people.
Yes. Well, let's give a big hand to
all
Vanessa. Yay!
Hey, Vanessa.
She works really hard.
And the technical people.
Yeah, the technical. It's been great having Linda come out. Thanks so much. We appreciate all your tweaking of the buttons, because we were trying to do it ourselves for a while, and it's hard to pay attention to the show and actually pay attention to the board at the same time.
I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's great, and I want to thank my makeup artist who comes in and makes sure that I look great on the radio every week.
Very important.
Because my head shines a bit because I've got the receding hairline. So I got a lot of powder on there. So thank you, Donna.
Oh, thank you, Donna.
You said makeup artist. I thought you had a consultant that just helped you make stuff up.
Yeah. Well, I have that as well. It's my writing team.
I get it, because it's a makeup artist. I see.
Ba-dum-ching.
Yeah. I heard you were a make-out artist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a wife.
That's just an example of some of the fine humor that we provide here.
Yeah.
So
what is poly?
So polytonality in music, the simultaneous occurrence of two or more tonalities or keys, the interrelated sets sets of notes and chords used in a composition. If only 2 keys are employed, the term bitonality is sometimes used. So we're
Right.
talking about more than 2 key signatures going on at once.
Well,
At the
that's right.
same time?
At the same time, simultaneous.
What? Oh, not in order.
No,
That would
well,
be-
we talked about that on key modulations. That's a key
oh.
modulation. This is
That's right.
polytonality.
What about gender fluidity then?
Sure, that
If you
works
got the
too.
That's a
bi and the
different show.
poly, the poly, the bi, and the tonal.
Yeah, but
a-
you're talking about one person who's going to be all 3.
I always leave the toilet seat up in the gender-free washroom. Is that mean?
Yes.
That's probably still sexist, isn't it?
I just always leave it down. You just can't
Yeah,
go wrong.
I guess I should.
You
yeah.
see, there's a song there.
What?
There's a song there.
Oh,
It's like Seinfeld.
I
What
left
did you
the
do?
toilet
Oh,
seat up in the all-gender bathroom for you.
That's right.
What did you do today? I came to the studio. That's a song.
There
That's
you
a song.
go.
Everything's a song.
But before we move on, I do want to thank Michael for coming out and sharing in the technical duties. It's very dedicated.
Great
We do
addition to the
appreciate
team.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Yay,
Right, yes.
everybody.
Nice to be appreciated.
Oh, we.
So, Michael, you've actually done a big list of all the not all our shows, but many of our shows.
All the theme shows?
Definitely. Talking to you guys previously, I was told that was going to be the focus, so I did go through a list. I came up with 46, although I missed the movie. Show, so there's at least 47. And as I
Wow.
said, I think in the first year you only did 3 or 4, but I think
Yeah.
you've probably done 3 or 4 since September. I think
So
this
we've
year.
done 47 theme shows?
That by my count, yeah.
I can't think of 47 things we talked about.
Well,
He has a list
Wowzers.
right here.
Yeah,
it's
that's
been,
true.
it's
He's
been
got a
5
list.
years, so you forget about some of
Yeah.
them.
For those of you at
Yeah,
home,
yeah.
I am passing the handwritten list to Neil.
Yeah. Well,
right.
we started to do
verify
them
that.
once a month, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes if we get a great idea, we just do that. Of course, we want our listeners to
that's
know if you're in the Toronto area, we are open to you applying to be on the show. We
Very
still do rely on new songwriters coming on the show and explaining how they write their songs. So
Yes.
please keep applying online there on the website.
And sometimes I feel a guest comes on that it's not really a theme show, but their kind of music is so unique, and you don't go into that kind of music that it almost seems like
Right.
like you. I think possibly 2 years ago had an industrial band on called Scrape, and you hadn't
Scrape,
had
yes.
an industrial, so you started off with tell us about industrial music. This year, I think you had your
Ill
first
Vibe.
ever hip hop artist.
Yes, Ill
Yes.
Vibe, and he was great.
First
We got to
and
get
only.
him back on. He was great. Yeah, no,
I
that's,
hear the
And
kids
he-
are into hip hop.
Well,
now,
he
so-
promised to send us some of his friends, so Ill Vibe, if you're listening, we're
That's
listening.
And the first sitar player.
Oh, Jordan Paul.
Jordan Paul. That was
First
really
sitar
fun.
player.
Brilliant, that
Yeah.
guy.
Yep. Jordan Paul.
It's that's. I was going to say, when Phil was asking us to reflect on what we actually had a planning meeting for the show on Sunday, which was great. The 3, Bruce, Neil, and Phil, sat around eating what was it, banana bread with chocolate in it, and talking about the future of Song Talk Radio. And we went around the circle and said, what was our why? Why did we start, and why are we continuing to be in this? Because we don't get paid a lot. It's actually minus. We get paid minus amount. If that's possible. So I said for me, it was discovering new talent, new songwriting talent. And it's a thrill. And it's not so much the performance, although that can help. Even if, what was her name? The young Filipino woman.
Oh, from way back when we first
Way
started?
back in the first year.
Oh, she played the piano.
No,
Again.
no, she with the one
Guitar.
with the guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, Jessica.
No,
No.
we did a band thing with her.
We did a band thing with her. Anyway, we'll get back to
Anna?
that.
Yeah.
But she wrote this very quiet little song just with a guitar, not hugely accomplished, and so beautiful. And I love that discovery. I think what I really love is discovering talent and being reminded that it's everywhere, that there's so much of it, and we can showcase a little bit of it here. And I love the idea of introducing our listeners to someone they've never heard of before who has an original songwriting idea and delivers it beautifully. That's the thrill for me.
That's true. We got a tweet in from CJRU 1280. What you're listening to, if you're listening to us on the radio, it says, "Congratulations, Song Talk Radio for 5 years on the air. Looking forward to 5 more." Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we got an email got an email from my Heather saying, congratulations. Thanks, everyone, for your hard work in bringing the show to us for 5 years and also for giving me the house to myself every Tuesday night. Seriously, the show keeps on getting better and better, and we all look forward to the next 5 years.
For the last
you.
5 years, my wife has always been saying Tuesday nights are my favorite because I get the condo to myself.
Yeah, that's what makes marriage work.
That's right. You need
It's
a
the
little
distance.
bit of space.
One thing that I've really enjoyed actually is we're kind of how we've sort of expanded from just doing directly technical songwriting, but we talked about like our song drafts, which are really fun. We talk about the
those are cool.
you know, there are our favorite songs of the 80s and the 90s, and I thought I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that's the closest we've gotten to doing a sports show like you've always wanted, Phil.
Yes. Well, because it's interesting, and you know, there's so many great songs out there, and and it's nice to be able to actually talk about them in that kind of a way.
Yeah,
you know?
the original pitch when we were putting this together we were pitching it to the station like over 5 years ago, several months before we went on live stream, and Phil's idea was it's a gardening show for songwriters.
Yeah, which is really cool.
And that model of the gardening show, which is tips and techniques. But Phil, I wanted to, if I may, there's one performance, and I think Neil has brought it, that I think is outstanding. It's an outstanding performance, writing, feeling, and it's this is the live recording, I think, from,
Who is it?
Jacob? Did you lift this from the show, Jacob Moon?
I think I lifted it from his album.
Okay, that's
I'm not
okay.
sure.
But it was a stunning performance. And it's Jacob Moon out of Hamilton, an accomplished songwriter and singer. And it's very rare for me. I've heard a lot of music live. My jaw was on the floor at the performance. You're going to hear the recording here. What he sang here in this little studio was exactly that, only better, even better.
true.
So here's Jacob Moon, Live a Little.
You have a nice little sort of alteration on the last few lines. You know, instead of just repeating the last chorus, which I think a lot of people would do,
Yes.
you just put a little bit of a change to it.
Yeah.
And that just kind of makes it that much more special. You know, and even though you just do it the one time, like
That's what
it's
makes it
perfect.
special.
That's a special. It's just a you know, it's a real sort of artisanal type of thing to do. You know, it's like that just sort of fine quality, little attention to detail. You know, instead of just doing the chorus at the end, you do a little bit of a variation. You know.
Yeah. There was a little bit of a melodic change.
Yeah. No. So what?
And
there was, a bit of
there was an
change.
extra line. You put an extra couple of lines.
Yeah, a little
in
extra
it.
scaffolding on the building, as it were.
Yeah. But it really serves to like give that little bit of extra tension right at the end, which is really kind of
which is beautiful.
which is
What now? What is
amazing.
the change at the end?
It's essentially just adding some. So in this case, it would be.
Because it's an open tune.
Tonight
Right?
we're gonna leave all those cares behind. So normally we just go, and then you'd be done it, kind of thing. Whereas in this case, they're burning off the last light they got just to see, and then it just keeps on climbing. If this love was all it's promised to be, it's a little inversions, and then a new chord. Baby, this is our time
Yeah,
to
that's it.
shine.
Oh.
Beautiful.
And so anytime you can get away with putting a melody over a new chord, a chord that doesn't belong to the key of the tune, but the melody permits it.
right.
As in other words, the melody doesn't sing a note that contravenes the
chord.
essential nature of the
triad.
new chord.
Right. Okay, so that was Jacob Moon when he was on the show, and he was explaining how at the end of that song, "I Live a
Little.
He did this thing which he termed reharmonization, where he sang the same melody over top that he had done 3 times prior in that song, but he changed the chords underneath it.
Right.
And if you change the chords and the melody remains the same, you're using a melody that's not not like you're using a note in the melody that's not allowed in the chord, but it just adds this sort of extra dimension of flavor and color at the tail end of your song or wherever in your song. And that was actually one of my favorite songwriting tips, because I'd never heard that. I probably heard it done before, but never heard it explained before. And I was like, that's brilliant. I got to try that. And I actually tried it in one of my songs. It didn't work nearly as well as Jacob did it.
Yeah, it
but
takes a while,
it probably takes a little practice to work on that.
I mean, a lot of this stuff needs to be consciously pointed out.
Yeah.
To sort of say, well, like, oh, I know they're doing something, but what is it?
Yeah.
And if you don't have any idea, you sort of kind of forget about it, and then you think about what you need to pick
Yeah,
up
and then for
from
me, you
groceries.
can sort of visualize a melody and visualize the chords underneath it.
Yeah.
Go, okay, I see what you're doing here.
So do you have
Yeah,
the song?
we have the actual song.
Let's roll that then. Jacob Moon.
Okay.
as things were ending. Said our goodbyes to what was gone. We fell in love, not comprehending the journey we were on. I think of all the years before I met you. I can't account for all that time. So I say it now before I forget to. I'm so grateful that you're mine. We both wear our share of scars. Some say they never fully heal. That's what keeps us real. Cares behind and live a little. You've seen my light on after midnight.
That was Jacob Moon.
Jacob Moon.
What
Live a
an
Little.
amazing.
Yeah, that's him
performance.
live in concert, and he was live doing private concert here. And there's been
the
other like Jules when Jules sang. And,
Oh, yeah.
some other artists. I mean, we don't focus on the performance here, but there's no doubt that when someone has put together the melody, the lyric, and the performance and the guitar,
Yeah.
and they got it all together, and it's a very personal thing. You can't beat that. It's just incredible.
And I
really.
don't
That's
know
true.
about personal, but it was a Gravely James, Chris Madronic, who was on the show a few months ago.
Right.
Hands down, the most energetic performance when he did that song.
That
with
is
the
true.
Rocking guitar, and it
Lots
was
of
just
fun.
brilliant.
One of my favorite performances was Jeffrey Straker.
Yes, he's quite
really,
good.
really great stuff. He brought in a keyboard.
Yeah.
And, we appreciate, we have a lot of people bringing in guitars, and guitars are fairly easy.
Yeah.
But when you bring in a keyboard, that's really dedication.
Yeah, you got to bring in the stand.
Do you remember when we had the 6-piece band in here?
Oh, that's right.
And it was even smaller then. The space was even there was
Yeah, yeah.
all around. We had this amazing band. There was there was percussion and
A mandolin.
bass, guitar, mandolin, a harmony.
Yeah,
and it was really fun because we don't usually get bands.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That was the God Knows.
The God knows.
The God Knows.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe it was. Right,
Yeah.
right. So let's quickly go through another favorite show from the past. Neil.
One of my favorite artists that came along, Michelle Thibodeau,
right.
because she had this interesting approach where her songs were almost literate. You know, like she took ideas
Right.
and sort of floated with them, and not that they weren't personal, but you know, for example, she had this song called Checkmate, where she decided to write a song about relationships, but base it all around and word plays with like the
Right.
rook and the knight and the queen and all that sort of stuff. So I found that very not quite, I don't know about inspiring, but it's like, sure, that's allowed too. You know, like you can take
Well, it's technique.
abstract ideas like it is.
That's
It is
another
a technique.
of taking one thing and putting it into the light of another. And there's lots of songs that do that, but it's a great technique, and it's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
to become conscious of, to bring it into your own show.
Yeah.
Linda, have you any other favorite shows that you can think of?
I'm not thinking of favorite shows right now, but I'm thinking of how being in this environment has increased my awareness of how songs are constructed. And when I listen to any song, I listen to lots of songs and always have, but I'm putting it together in a way that is a little bit more analytical about the parts of the songs than I ever had before. And that's just because we're always talking about different parts of the songs and of course the hook. And I'm always looking for the hook, and I'm always looking for the hook in my own when I'm trying to write now too, you know. The hook is big on this show and it gets talked about a lot, but other things too, you know, what the chord changes are, or what the form of the song is, whether it's A, B, A, or if it's
Right.
verse, chorus, or if there's a pre-chorus. You just mentioned a pre-chorus for a song. So
Or a
all these
bridge
different
or
parts
coda.
that I'm more analytical and more aware of.
So has it come out in your writing, do you think?
I think so, but I haven't written too much in the last couple of months. But when I do, yes, it has.
for
It
sure,
has.
for sure.
How about you, Mike? Quickly think of one of your favorite shows.
Well, there was a non-verbal hook show that was pretty flippity
Yeah.
flappity shazam wow.
Yes,
That's true.
Ba-dum-ching.
I really enjoyed that.
yeah.
And Bruce.
Well, I met a young man from Spain we have a thing called Songwriters Meetup, which we've been running for 7 years, I guess, 7 or 8 years. And that meets once a month. And there was this young man from Spain who was spending a year in Canada. And he sang this song called When I Sleep. And he said that he's finding English was his second language. He writes his songs in English because he finds that it's more interesting than in Spanish. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And he wrote this beautiful song called When I Sleep, which is very simple, and it had this beautiful hooky melody in it. And he came and sang it. And then he's gone back to Spain now.
Oh,
And
that's great. Yeah, I
from what I
remember
see
that.
on SoundCloud, he's still
Well,
recording
that's
things.
the sort of thing that we've heard from other songwriters, especially if they're primarily guitarists. They say they sit down at the piano, and essentially you're going to a language that you're not that familiar with,
Exactly.
and something different comes out, and sometimes even more pure.
He said that he was better able to express his emotions in English than in Spanish. And I'm not
I've
sure
often wondered
why.
that because at
it's simpler. He's using simpler
maybe.
language, and it's just more direct, maybe.
and one thing I did want to mention before is our songwriters meetup, which of course is still going strong, and that's always an amazing experience. We come out once a month in Toronto, but when people come out to the meetup and it's obvious that English is a second language, and they're writing in English, and I'm always surprised by that. And I'm not sure it's because did they just grow up listening to English bands? And that was
Probably
it?
a lot of
That
them
was
did.
part of that.
Yeah.
But because I'm sure there's some sort of subtleties, it'd be an interesting thing to talk to someone who writes in French, because and how the French rhyme schemes work out.
We had one children's writer, remember, who wrote children's
Helene,
songs.
Marie
something.
Helene?
Yeah, years ago.
Right, yeah.
But the other thing is that I've just thought of another theme show, which would be songs with non-English lyric, because I love listening to, for example, Brazilian music because it's Portuguese. I don't know what they're saying, but the shape of the language, they could be singing "I'm hanging the washing out today," but it's probably something about corazón, which means I love you, or the heart, right?
Do you think songs gain something from the fact that you don't know what they're saying?
Well, they do for me because I don't know. So I focus then more on the melody and rhythm and the instrumentation and the vocal qualities. Because, see, I'm a lyricist primarily, so when I can't figure out what the lyric is, my mind goes to the other stuff. It's kind of a bit of a holiday for me. Because I'm listening to Gregorian chants right now just to chill at home.
You should try some death metal, because you can't understand those lyrics.
Yeah, I know.
I've actually been listening to some little bit of Italian hip hop in the past couple of months, and I just always assume that the lyrics are both genius, socially conscious, clever stuff, and they may not be, but
And they taste good.
But I imagine that they are, because I have no idea what they're saying.
There is a
K-pop
part in
is the same. Yeah.
there's a part in a Clash song that a band when I was in high school used to cover. Should I stay or should I go?
Yeah,
and they actually had these like Spanish bits within this within the chorus or the verse, I think. But we could never actually figure out what they were, so we just made up our own stuff.
Right.
Like, stop your mother, meet her on the subway. 'Cause that's kind of like what it sounded like.
Right.
It's interesting because they had these Spanish bits, but I didn't actually know what any of those words meant within the context of a English
What about
song.
you, Phil? What's your final thoughts on a show that really is
Well, I love
memorable?
Blair Packham when he comes in. He did the Beatles deep dive.
Yeah. You think you know everything about the Beatles, but man, I learned so much that night.
Yeah, there's so much depth there, and it's interesting because and Blair, we've talked about this a couple of times. He's very different because he likes the Beatles after they went past their Tin Pan Alley kind of approach.
Yeah,
And that's when I sort of
as you
stopped
should.
liking the Beatles. I liked the Beatles when they were doing the stuff that sounded like,
The Mop Top stuff.
Pop songs.
the early stuff, basically Rubber Soul and earlier.
Yeah, who likes
that's my
that
favorite
Sgt. Pepper's stuff?
Well,
Yeah,
I like
nobody-
it, but you know what it is? I like that stuff, but when I want to hear really weird and experimental, I'll listen to The Residents or Morton Subotnick or some kind of weird 20th century stuff. When I hear the Beatles, I want to hear the Bach version of rock. I want to hear these pure, perfect,
Classic rock. yeah.
classic bits of songwriting. So I always like Blair Packham stuff. And the Draft Show, I had so much fun on the Draft Show.
Yeah, those are great.
And we have another couple of new ones coming up, and that's going to be some good fun, I think, coming up the next little while.
Wow.
But I think the band's coming in
band
because
is
I think
here.
it's time. That's
Wrap
been
it up.
5 years, ladies and
5
gentlemen.
years.
Thank you so
Yay
much.
to us.
Bravo, bravo,
What-
Song Talk Radio.
And why don't we thank our listeners? I mean, the ones, especially people like Michael, who have stayed with us for 5 years. And
Thank
as
you,
he said,
Michael.
we have no idea how many have. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening,
Yeah.
all you folks.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate it because, without you, we're just a bunch of people in a room. Because that's all
With
the time we have
microphones.
tonight on Song Talk Radio with Bruce, Neil, and Phil. We'd like to thank you for hanging around for 5 years. Hopefully for another 5 years. Please send us your your impressions via Twitter at Song Talk Radio. Send us an email at feedback@songtalk.ca. Send us something on Facebook or on YouTube at Song Talk Radio. Stop by the site at songtalk.ca and subscribe to the Song Talk Radio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Stitcher.com, or your favorite podcast catcher. Don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at the site as well. You can find links to all the books, products and books and web services we mentioned here on Song Talk Radio on the resources page. And if you are in the Toronto area, please join us for the next Songwriters Meetup, Sunday, November 18th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Transact Club. Stop by the site to find out all those good details. Thank you for Linda Lavender for coming out with us all the time. Michael,
Thank you guys.
you were just with your big brain. Thanks for coming out. Always fun.
But I would be funnier with a parrot.
We'd like to thank you, Vanessa Vreeland, for working so hard. Mr. Michael Proudfoot for making us sound good on the board. And most of all, we'd like to thank you, the home listener. You can follow Neil if you want at...
NeilModi.com.
You can follow Bruce at...
BruceHarrett.com.
And if you want, you can follow Linda Lavender at...
LindaLavender.com.
And Michael, can people get in touch with you?
I have no social media presence whatsoever.
Good for you.
Michael's off the grid. And you can follow Vanessa at Sunny_Vanessa on Twitter.
On Sunday, if you like. Or on Monday, if you like.
And how about you, Michael? Can't follow you.
Quit following me.
Leave Michael alone. You can follow me at the. You can follow me at the Phil Emery. Please stop by the site songtalk.ca to browse past shows. Find out how you can be guest on the show. Keep on listening, everyone. We'll see you next week. Good night, everyone. Bye. We have very bad sound.